Hello there and welcome to the Sleepy Science channel. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Maybe you've had one of those days where the world felt a little too loud, a little too bright, a little too certain about everything. Or maybe you're the kind of person who finds comfort not in answers but in the beautiful, endless questions that float through the darkness like fireflies. Either way, you're in exactly the right place. Tonight, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to celebrate the mysteries. We're going to honor the things that science, with all its brilliance and telescopes and equations scrawled across chalkboards in universities around the world, still can't quite figure out. And there's something deeply comforting about that, isn't there? In a world that sometimes pretends to have everything solved, these mysteries remind us that wonder is still alive. That curiosity still has room to breathe. That the universe is still keeping secrets, whispering them softly into the night. So go ahead and get comfortable. Adjust your pillow, pull your blanket up just the way you like it, and let your body sink a little deeper into wherever you're resting. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been with us before, welcome back. And if you find yourself enjoying this journey into the unknown, maybe consider subscribing or leaving a like. It helps other people find these quiet moments too. But there's no pressure. Tonight is just about you, the mysteries, and the gentle space between waking and dreaming. We're going to explore 100 things that modern science still can't explain. Not because science has failed, but because the universe is vast and strange and endlessly creative. These aren't frustrations. They're invitations. Invitations to wonder, to imagine, to let your mind wander through questions that don't demand answers. So take a deep breath in and let it out slowly. There's nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to do. Just listen, drift, and let the mysteries carry you softly into sleep. Let's begin with something that happens to you every single night, something so familiar you might not even think about it anymore. Sleep itself remains one of the great mysteries of neuroscience. Scientists know that sleep is essential, that without it the body and mind begin to falter in profound ways. But they still can't fully explain why we need to spend a third of our lives in this altered state of consciousness. There are theories, of course, beautiful ones about memory consolidation and cellular repair, about dreams serving as emotional processing theaters, but no single explanation captures the full picture. Why does consciousness need to fade? Why do we drift away from the world each night only to return each morning, slightly changed, slightly renewed? It's as if sleep is the universe's way of reminding us that even our most wakeful moments are just one layer of existence, and there are deeper layers waiting just beneath. And speaking of consciousness, here's something even stranger. Science still cannot explain what consciousness actually is. We can map the brain, trace neural pathways like rivers flowing through living tissue, measure electrical storms of thought racing across synapses, but the experience of being you, of feeling the warmth of sunlight or the ache of missing someone, remains fundamentally mysterious. Philosophers call this the hard problem of consciousness, and it's a beautiful problem in its own way. How does the meat of the brain, these billions of cells firing in patterns, create the sensation of selfhood? How does matter become aware of itself? You are matter that has learned to wonder about its own existence, and that might be the most mysterious thing in the entire universe. Let that thought sit gently in your mind as you breathe, this miracle of you being here, aware, listening, thinking. Then there's the mystery of why we dream at all. Every night your brain constructs entire worlds, populates them with people and places, weaves narratives that feel urgent and strange and sometimes more vivid than waking life. But science still debates the purpose, if there even is one. Some researchers suggest dreams are just random neural noise, the brain's way of sorting through the day's debris. Others believe dreams serve crucial emotional functions, or that they're rehearsal spaces for potential futures. But no one can say for certain. And perhaps that's okay. Perhaps dreams are meant to be mysterious, these nightly voyages into landscapes that follow their own logic, their own physics. Tonight, when you dream, you'll be participating in one of the mind's greatest unexplained phenomena, and there's something lovely about that. Now let's drift outward, beyond the boundaries of your bedroom, beyond even the planet. Dark matter makes up about 27% of the universe, but science can't directly detect it or fully explain what it is. We know it exists because of its gravitational effects, the way galaxies spin and cluster in patterns that visible matter alone can't account for. It's there, holding galaxies together like invisible scaffolding, but it doesn't interact with light or any other electromagnetic radiation we can measure. Imagine that. Most of the universe is made of something we can't see, can't touch, can't understand. The cosmos is built on mystery, held together by forces we've only just begun to name. And here you are, a small, warm being made of stardust, resting in the darkness, connected to all that cosmic unknown in ways you might never fully comprehend. But dark matter isn't even the strangest thing out there. Dark energy, which makes up about 68% of the universe, is even more mysterious. It's the force that's causing the universe to expand at an accelerating rate, pushing galaxies apart faster and faster, stretching the very fabric of space-time. But no one knows what it is or where it comes from. The universe is growing, spreading out like ripples on an infinite pond, driven by an energy that remains completely unexplained. When you look up at the night sky, you're seeing light from stars that are racing away from you, carried by a force that science can name but not understand. The universe is full of gentle mysteries, and dark energy is one of the deepest. A reminder that even the largest structures in existence are governed by principles we're still learning to perceive. And while we're out here in the cosmos, consider the mystery of the universe's origins. The Big Bang Theory explains much about how the universe evolved from an incredibly hot, dense state, but it can't explain what came before, or what triggered that initial expansion, or what the universe is expanding into. These questions might not even make sense in conventional terms. Time itself may have begun with the Big Bang, so asking what came before might be like asking what's north of the North Pole. But still, the human mind wonders. We lie in our beds at night and think about beginnings, about first moments, about how something came from nothing, or whether there ever was nothing at all. These are the kinds of thoughts that make excellent companions for falling asleep, questions so vast that they invite your mind to expand and then gently release, letting go into the soft darkness of rest. Let's return to Earth now, to the familiar world of water and air and living things, because mystery lives here too, in every leaf and wave. Science still can't fully explain how life began on this planet. There are compelling theories about primordial soups and lightning strikes, about RNA molecules learning to replicate themselves in warm, tidal pools. But the exact sequence of events that transformed chemistry into biology remains unknown. At some point, roughly 4 billion years ago, something shifted. Molecules organized themselves in just the right way, and life sparked into being. That first living thing, whatever it was, carried within it the seed of everything that came after, every tree and bird and person, including you. You're part of an unbroken chain stretching back to that mysterious beginning, a chain forged in circumstances science is still piecing together. And once life began, it started doing something extraordinary. It started evolving, adapting, flowering into millions of forms. But one particular transition remains deeply mysterious. Science can't fully explain how multicellular organisms evolved from single-celled ones. For billions of years, life was just individual cells, each one a complete universe unto itself. Then, somehow, cells began cooperating, forming colonies, dividing labor, becoming organisms made of trillions of cells working together. Your body is one such organism, a society of cells that have learned to be you. But the evolutionary steps that led to this cooperation, the mechanisms that allowed individual cells to become integrated communities, remain partially shrouded. It's a beautiful mystery when you think about it. This transition from solitary to communal, from one to many, from simple to complex. Now consider something even more intimate, something happening inside you right now as you listen. Science still doesn't fully understand how memories are stored and retrieved in the brain. Memories aren't like files in a computer, sitting in specific locations waiting to be opened. They seem to be distributed across neural networks, patterns of connections that light up and reconstruct experiences each time you remember. But the mechanism is still unclear. How does your brain take an experience, a moment of laughter or surprise or pain, and transform it into something that can be recalled years later? Why do some memories fade while others remain vivid across decades? And why, sometimes, do memories change each time we access them, subtly rewriting themselves like stories told and retold? You are, in a sense, a living collection of mysteries, memories woven through your consciousness in ways science is still learning to read. Let's shift to something you might be feeling right now, the gentle pull toward sleep. Science still can't completely explain why we yawn, even though humans have been yawning since before we were humans. The most common theory suggests yawning helps cool the brain or increases alertness by drawing in more oxygen, but studies have shown inconsistent results. Yawning is also contagious in ways that defy simple explanation, spreading through groups of people, even working across species. You can make a dog yawn just by yawning yourself. It might be an empathy response, a social bonding mechanism, or something else entirely. But here's the lovely part. You don't need to understand yawning to benefit from it. Go ahead, yawn if you feel the urge. Let your jaw stretch, your eyes water slightly, your body do this ancient, mysterious thing that mammals have been doing for millions of years. Some mysteries are meant to be experienced, not solved. While we're thinking about the body, here's something that might surprise you. Science still can't fully explain how anesthesia works. Doctors use it every day in surgeries around the world, rendering patients unconscious safely and reliably. but the underlying mechanisms remain unclear. Anesthetic drugs affect consciousness in profound ways, creating a state that's different from sleep, different from coma, a kind of reversible void where time disappears and pain can't reach. How do these chemicals selectively turn off awareness while leaving vital functions intact? The brain is so complex, consciousness so multifaceted, that anesthesia's effects ripple through neural systems in ways researchers are still mapping. It's humbling in a way that one of medicine's most important tools still carries a core of mystery, a reminder that the line between consciousness and its absence is thinner and stranger than we might imagine. And speaking of states of consciousness, science still struggles to explain the placebo effect in all its strange power. Giving someone a sugar pill, a treatment with no active ingredients, can produce real, measurable improvements in their condition, simply because they believe it will work. The mind, through expectation and belief, can trigger genuine physiological changes, releasing pain-relieving chemicals, modulating immune responses, altering the progression of symptoms. This isn't imagination or trickery. It's the brain demonstrating an ability to influence the body in ways that transcend our current models of biology. Nocebo effects work too, where negative expectations can worsen outcomes. Your mind and body are in constant conversation, speaking languages science is still learning to translate, and sometimes belief itself becomes a kind of medicine, mysterious and powerful, woven through the fabric of healing in ways that blur the boundaries between thought and matter. Let's wander into the realm of physics now, where the universe reveals its most counterintuitive secrets, the places where common sense breaks down and mystery takes over. Quantum mechanics describes a world where particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously until observed, a phenomenon called superposition. It works. The mathematics are impeccable, and the predictions have been confirmed countless times, but science still can't explain what it means. Why does observation collapse the wave function? What constitutes an observer? Is consciousness required, or does any interaction count? These questions have puzzled physicists for nearly a century, spawning interpretations and debates that feel more like philosophy than science. And yet, the quantum world doesn't care about our confusion. Electrons continue to exist in probabilistic hazes. Particles tunnel through barriers they shouldn't be able to cross, and the universe operates according to rules that seem designed to baffle human intuition. Then there's quantum entanglement, which Einstein famously called spooky action at a distance. When two particles become entangled, they remain connected in such a way that measuring one instantly affects the other, regardless of the distance separating them. They could be on opposite sides of the galaxy, and still, they'd respond to each other instantaneously. This doesn't violate relativity because no information travels faster than light, but it does suggest that space isn't quite what it seems, that separation is somehow negotiable at the quantum level. Science can demonstrate entanglement, use it in emerging technologies like quantum computing, but the mechanism remains mysterious. How do particles maintain this connection? What is the nature of the correlation? The universe keeps its secrets even as it reveals them, offering us glimpses of deeper patterns we're only beginning to perceive. Now let's consider something closer to home, something as simple and essential as water. Science still can't completely explain all of water's anomalous properties, the ways it defies the behavior expected from its molecular structure. Water expands when it freezes, which is why ice floats, a property crucial for aquatic life but unusual among substances. Water has an extraordinarily high surface tension, allowing insects to walk across ponds. It has a remarkable capacity to dissolve other substances, earning it the title of universal solvent. And liquid water can exist in multiple structural states, with different arrangements of hydrogen bonds creating distinct phases. These properties emerge from the interplay of water's simple molecules, 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen. But the full picture of why water behaves so uniquely remains an active area of research. Every time you take a sip, wash your hands, or watch rain fall, you're interacting with one of nature's most mysterious substances, something so common we forget how extraordinary it truly is. Let's drift upward now, into the sky, into the phenomena that paint the atmosphere with beauty and strangeness. Ball lightning remains one of meteorology's great mysteries, a rare phenomenon where glowing spheres of light appear during thunderstorms, floating through the air, sometimes passing through walls or windows before vanishing. Witnesses describe them as ranging from golf ball to beach ball sized, lasting anywhere from seconds to minutes. But science has struggled to explain how they form or what sustains them. There are theories involving plasma, electromagnetic fields, and even exotic chemical reactions, but no single explanation accounts for all reported observations. Ball lightning exists in that liminal space between documented phenomenon and unsolved mystery, a reminder that even the sky above you holds secrets, that nature still has tricks science hasn't fully learned to replicate or understand. And while we're looking at the sky, consider something you might see on a very lucky night. The aurora borealis and aurora australis, the northern and southern lights, are caused by solar wind interacting with Earth's magnetic field and atmosphere, creating those breathtaking curtains of green and red and purple light. Science understands the basic mechanism, but many details remain mysterious. Why do auroras sometimes pulse or flicker in complex patterns? What determines the specific colors and shapes? How do they produce the sounds that some observers report hearing? A kind of crackling or whooshing that shouldn't be possible given how high in the atmosphere the lights occur. The auroras are nature's light show, performances staged in the thin air above the polar regions, and they carry with them an element of the unexplained, a touch of magic that even scientific understanding can't completely dispel. Imagine them now, dancing in the darkness above some distant horizon, beautiful and mysterious, painting questions across the sky. Let's return to the ground, to the solid earth beneath you, because even the planet itself holds mysteries. Science still can't predict earthquakes with any precision. Seismologists understand the mechanics of plate tectonics, the slow grinding of continental plates that builds up stress along fault lines. But knowing where and approximately when earthquakes are likely isn't the same as prediction. The specific timing, the exact magnitude, the particular moment when stress becomes movement, these remain beyond our reach. The Earth keeps its intentions hidden until the moment it shifts. And this isn't a failure of science so much as a recognition of complexity, of systems with countless variables interacting in ways that make precise prediction extraordinarily difficult. The ground beneath you is more dynamic than it seems, slowly moving, constantly adjusting, and you're riding along on a thin crust floating over a molten interior, held up by processes we understand in outline but not in every particular. Now let's venture into the ocean, that vast body of water covering most of the planet, where mysteries swim through depths we've barely begun to explore. Science still can't fully explain how whales and dolphins navigate across thousands of miles of open ocean, returning to specific locations with remarkable precision. These animals seem to use a combination of echolocation, magnetic field sensing, and memory of underwater landmarks, but the complete picture remains unclear. How do they create mental maps of an environment with so few visual references? How do mothers teach migration routes to their young? The ocean is a world of sound and sensation completely different from our own, and the intelligence moving through it operates according to principles we're still learning to understand. Imagine being a whale, your mind shaped by the pressure and darkness and acoustic richness of the deep, navigating by senses humans can barely imagine. What would that consciousness be like? Science doesn't yet have full answers, only glimpses, pieces of a puzzle still being assembled. And speaking of the ocean's mysteries, consider the vertical migration that happens every single night in the waters of the world. Countless billions of small organisms, from zooplankton to small fish, rise toward the surface as darkness falls, then descend back to the depths at dawn. This is the largest migration on Earth, happening daily, moving more biomass than any other animal movement. But science still can't completely explain why. The common theory suggests these creatures are following food sources while avoiding predators that hunt by sight, but the precise triggers and mechanisms remain subjects of research. The ocean breathes, in a sense, its life moving up and down in rhythm with the sun, and you're resting here on the surface of a planet where such vast, invisible patterns unfold constantly in the darkness below the waves. Let's think about something smaller now, something that might be living in your own body. The human microbiome, the trillions of bacteria and other microorganisms that live in and on you, remains partially mysterious. Science has made enormous progress mapping these communities, understanding their roles in digestion, immunity, and even mood, but there's still so much unknown. How exactly do these microbes communicate with the brain? Why do some bacterial communities promote health while others contribute to disease? How much of what you think of as you is actually shaped by the microscopic life you carry? You're not really an individual. You're an ecosystem, a walking world inhabited by countless other organisms, and the relationships between you and them are still being discovered. It's humbling and beautiful at once. This realization that you're never alone, that life is always plural, always collaborative, even at scales too small to see. Now consider something you might experience tonight if you're lucky, or perhaps something you felt before while drifting at the edge of sleep. Science still can't fully explain hypnic jerks, those sudden muscle spasms that sometimes jolt you awake just as you're falling asleep. The most common theories suggest they're related to the relaxation of muscles, As the nervous system transitions between waking and sleeping states, perhaps a misfire as the brain releases control. Some researchers speculate they might be evolutionary holdovers, the nervous system's way of checking that you're safely settled before allowing full unconsciousness. But there's no definitive answer. These little jolts, these sudden falls into a bed you're already lying in, remain minor mysteries, reminders that even the nightly transition into sleep is more complex than it seems. If you feel one tonight, don't worry. It's just your body doing something it's done since you were born, something human bodies have always done, for reasons we still can't entirely explain. Let's move to something you might see if you venture outside on certain nights, especially if you're far from city lights. Fireflies synchronize their flashing in ways that science is still working to fully understand. In some species, thousands of fireflies in the same area will begin to flash in unison, creating waves of light that pulse through the darkness with perfect coordination. This synchronization emerges without any central coordination, no leader firefly giving signals. Each insect adjusts its rhythm based on what it sees around it, and somehow, collectively, the group finds a common beat. The mathematics of how this spontaneous order emerges is still an active area of research, touching on complexity theory and emergent behavior. But the fireflies don't need mathematics. They just flash, and the pattern takes care of itself. A small miracle of coordination happening in fields and forests every summer, turning patches of night into living light shows guided by principles we're still learning to describe. And while we're thinking about light, here's something strange about your own eyes. Science still can't fully explain why some people see phosphenes, those little lights and patterns that appear when you close your eyes or rub them gently. These are not real lights but spontaneous activity in the visual system, the brain creating the sensation of light without any external input. Some researchers think they might be related to blood flow or pressure on the retina. Others suggest they're just neural noise, the visual cortex firing randomly in the absence of stimulation. But the full explanation remains elusive. Even with your eyes closed, in complete darkness, your brain can still show you light, painting patterns on the inside of your eyelids like a private fireworks display. It's one more reminder that perception is constructed, that what you see is as much about your brain as it is about the world, and sometimes the boundaries between inner and outer experience blur in ways that feel almost magical. You're doing beautifully. There's no need to remember everything you're hearing. Let the words wash over you like gentle waves, carrying you deeper into relaxation. Your body knows how to rest, and your mind is learning to release its grip on the day. Notice your breathing, how it's slowed and steadied without you even trying. That's your body taking care of you, preparing for sleep in its own wise way. The mysteries we're exploring don't need to be solved tonight. They can just float around you, soft and wondering, like stars reflected in still water. Let yourself drift a little more with each breath. Let's think about something happening far above you right now, in the thin upper reaches of the atmosphere. Science still can't fully explain sprites, elves, and blue jets, rare atmospheric phenomena that occur above thunderstorms at high altitudes. These brief flashes of light, discovered relatively recently because they happen so far above the clouds, include upward-reaching jets of blue light, expanding rings of red light called sprites, and brief luminous events called elves. They're related to thunderstorm activity and electromagnetic effects, but the precise mechanisms of their formation remain under study. They happen so quickly, lasting just milliseconds, that they're difficult to observe and measure. But they're real, these strange lights dancing in the upper atmosphere, visible occasionally to pilots and captured in photographs by researchers, adding another layer to the weather, another mystery written in light against the darkness above the storms. Now let's consider something you might have in a vase somewhere, or growing in a garden. Science still can't completely explain how plants sense gravity, a process called gravitropism. Roots grow downward, stems grow upward, and plants can reorient themselves if turned on their side, but the cellular mechanisms that allow them to detect which way is down remain partially mysterious. There are specialized cells containing starch-filled organelles that may act like tiny stones settling under gravity's influence, triggering chemical signals, but the full pathway from mechanical sensation to growth response isn't completely mapped. Plants, in their silent, rooted way, are solving orientation problems constantly, measuring the pull of the earth and responding in slow, green increments. They're navigating their world without brains, without nervous systems, using mechanisms evolution crafted over hundreds of millions of years, and we're still learning to understand their elegant solutions. Let's shift to something more abstract now. Something that exists in the realm of pure mathematics but touches the physical world in unexpected ways. Science and mathematics still can't explain why the distribution of prime numbers follows certain patterns. Prime numbers, those integers divisible only by 1 in themselves, seem random at first glance, but they contain hidden regularities that mathematicians have noticed but can't fully explain. The Riemann hypothesis, one of mathematics' greatest unsolved problems, relates to the distribution of primes, and if proven, it would reveal deep truths about these fundamental building blocks of arithmetic. But for now, primes remain partially mysterious, scattered through the number line according to rules we can observe but not completely understand. And strangely, prime numbers appear in nature, in cicada life cycles and plant spirals, as if mathematics itself is woven into the fabric of the living world. Now think about something you probably experienced earlier today, something so common you might not have noticed it. Science still can't fully explain why music affects us so deeply, why certain combinations of sounds can make us cry or dance or feel nostalgia for moments we've never actually lived. Music engages multiple brain regions simultaneously, affecting emotion, memory, and even motor control, but the mechanisms underlying its power remain incompletely understood. Why does a minor key often sound sad to Western listeners? Why do rhythm and melody together create something more powerful than either alone? Why can a song transport you back to a specific moment in your life with startling clarity? Music may be one of the most mysterious human universals, something every culture creates, something that seems to speak directly to the soul without needing to pass through the filter of language. Tonight, if you have music playing softly, let it work its unexplained magic, carrying you toward sleep on waves of organized sound. Let's think about color now, about the strange way your brain constructs the rainbow. Science still can't fully explain why we experience qualia, the subjective qualities of conscious experience. The redness of red, the painfulness of pain, the particular taste of chocolate, these are qualia, and they present a deep philosophical and scientific puzzle. Your brain processes wavelengths of light and interprets them as colors. But why does that interpretation feel like something? Why isn't processing just processing, occurring in darkness without the accompanying experience? This question touches on the hard problem of consciousness we mentioned earlier, but it feels especially acute with qualia. You and I both might look at something red and call it red, but is your experience of redness the same as mine? Could it be completely different and we'd never know? These questions might feel abstract, but they're pointing at something fundamental about existence, about what it's like to be a being who doesn't just process information but experiences it. And while we're thinking about experience, here's something that touches on the strange nature of time itself. Science still can't fully explain why we experience time as flowing in one direction, from past to future. At the level of fundamental physics, most equations work equally well forward or backward in time. Particles could, in theory, move in reverse, and the mathematics wouldn't forbid it. But entropy, the tendency of systems to move toward disorder, gives time an arrow. Things fall apart, heat disperses, eggs break but don't spontaneously reassemble. Yet even this doesn't completely explain the subjective experience of time passing, the feeling that you're moving through moments, the way memory works backward and anticipation forward. You're experiencing time right now as you listen, feeling it pass, feeling yourself getting sleepier, and that experience itself is one of reality's quiet mysteries, so familiar we forget how strange it is. Let's turn our attention to something you might experience in dreams, that strange theater of the sleeping mind. Science still can't explain lucid dreaming, the phenomenon where dreamers become aware they're dreaming and can sometimes control the dream's content. Not everyone experiences lucid dreams, and those who do can't always trigger them at will. But when they happen, they represent a remarkable state of consciousness, aware yet asleep, creating yet perceiving. The brain is somehow maintaining two modes simultaneously, the narrative-generating mode of dreaming and the metacognitive awareness that usually belongs to waking. Researchers have confirmed lucid dreaming through studies where lucid dreamers signal from within their dreams using prearranged eye movements, but the mechanisms enabling this hybrid state remain unclear. Perhaps tonight you'll dream lucidly, finding yourself aware in that other world, shaping it with your thoughts, exploring the mystery of consciousness from the inside. Now consider something that happens to many people, including perhaps you. Science still can't fully explain déjà vu, that eerie sensation of having experienced something before even though you know you haven't. For a moment, the present feels like a memory, as if you've already lived this exact scenario. Theories range from neural misfiring that causes a present experience to be tagged as a memory, to a brief desynchronization between the brain's perceptual systems, to something about the way memories are stored and retrieved. But no explanation is complete. Déjà vu remains one of those small, strange glitches in consciousness, a reminder that perception is always constructed, always interpreted, and sometimes the construction process reveals itself in uncanny ways. If you experience déjà vu, it's your brain showing you its seams, the places where the magic trick of consciousness becomes briefly visible. Let's think about something most people experience but rarely discuss. Science still can't fully explain why humans blush, why embarrassment or strong emotion causes blood to rush to the face, turning cheeks pink or red. From an evolutionary standpoint, blushing seems disadvantageous, revealing inner states that might be better hidden. Yet humans do it universally, across all cultures. Some theories suggest blushing evolved as a nonverbal apology or sign of remorse, a way to demonstrate vulnerability and maintain social bonds. But the mechanism is unusual, involving the involuntary nervous system in ways that are difficult to consciously control. You can't decide not to blush, which perhaps is the point. The body betraying inner states in ways that communicate authenticity. It's a small mystery embedded in the social animal that you are, a peculiarity of being human. Now let's drift back to the cosmos, to phenomena on scales almost impossible to imagine. Science still can't explain fast radio bursts, brief, but extremely energetic pulses of radio waves coming from distant galaxies. They last only milliseconds but release as much energy as the sun emits in several days. Astronomers have detected hundreds of them, and some repeat while others occur only once, but their origins remain mysterious. Theories include everything from neutron stars and black holes to, less seriously, alien technology. Each burst is like a cosmic beacon, a flash of inexplicable energy crossing billions of light years to reach our telescopes. The universe is sending signals we can detect but not yet understand, and that feels somehow poetic, as if existence itself is reaching out, saying, "Here I am. I'm strange and wonderful and still full of surprises." While we're out in space, let's consider something about the moon, that familiar companion that might be visible outside your window tonight. Science still can't completely explain how the moon formed. The leading theory, the giant impact hypothesis, suggests that early in Earth's history, a Mars-sized object crashed into our planet, and the debris from that collision coalesced into the moon. Evidence supports this, but details remain unclear. What was the exact nature of the collision? Why is the moon's composition not quite what we'd expect from such an impact? Why is it exactly the right size and distance to create perfect solar eclipses, appearing from Earth the same size as the Sun despite being vastly smaller? That last part is likely coincidence, but it's the kind of coincidence that feels meaningful. The moon and sun hanging in your sky with such precise relationship that totality becomes possible. The moon occasionally covering the sun completely, revealing the corona, turning day briefly to night. The universe is full of such unlikely arrangements, and each one invites wonder. And speaking of unlikely arrangements, science still can't fully explain the fine-tuning of physical constants. The fact that many fundamental values in physics seem precisely calibrated to allow for the existence of complex matter and life. If the strength of gravity were slightly different, stars might not form. If the electromagnetic force varied even a little, atoms might not be stable. There are dozens of such parameters, and many appear to fall within narrow ranges necessary for a universe like ours. Some physicists invoke the anthropic principle. We observe these values because we exist, and we can only exist in a universe where these values allow for observers. Others suggest a multiverse, countless universes with different constants, and we happen to be in one that works. But the mystery remains, this apparent calibration, this sense that the universe is balanced on a knife's edge between chaos and complexity. And somehow, here we are, aware of it all, thinking about it as we drift toward sleep. Let's return to Earth, to the everyday mysteries that surround us in ordinary moments. Science still can't fully explain why ice is slippery. It seems like an obvious question with an obvious answer, but the mechanism is more subtle than you might think. For a long time, people believed pressure from a skater's blade melted a thin layer of ice, creating a lubricating film of water. But more recent research suggests the surface of ice has a quasi-liquid layer even without pressure, a boundary zone that's neither quite solid nor quite liquid. The full explanation involves molecular dynamics, temperature, and the peculiar behavior of water we mentioned earlier. But ice remains, in some ways, mysterious in its slipperiness, enabling skating and skiing, and all the graceful motions humans perform on frozen water, gliding across surfaces that physics still hasn't completely characterized. Now think about something that might be happening in your own body right now, a process you're not aware of, but that's essential to your existence. Science still can't fully explain how proteins fold, the process by which long chains of amino acids twist and bend into precise three-dimensional shapes that determine their function. Proteins are the machinery of life, doing everything from building cellular structures to fighting infections, and their shape is crucial to their role. But predicting how a given amino acid sequence will fold remains enormously difficult, a problem computers have struggled with despite decades of research. The protein folds according to principles that minimize energy and maximize stability, but with so many possible configurations, the search space is vast. Your body is folding proteins right now with perfect accuracy, something it learned to do through billions of years of evolution, and science is still learning to replicate that wisdom. Let's think about something you might notice when you look in the mirror. Science still can't fully explain why humans have fingerprints, the unique patterns of ridges on your fingertips. They improve grip, especially on wet surfaces, and they enhance touch sensitivity. But from an evolutionary standpoint, the specifics of why each person's fingerprints are unique remains unclear. Even identical twins who share the same DNA have different fingerprints. The patterns form in the womb, influenced by factors like position, blood flow, and random variations in development. These tiny ridges make you identifiable, a pattern no one else shares, and they've been that way since before you were born. You carry your uniqueness on your fingertips, quite literally, marks of individuality etched in skin for reasons that blend the practical with the mysterious. Now let's consider something vast and slow, something happening beneath the continents. Science still can't fully explain the detailed mechanisms of what's happening in Earth's core and mantle. We know the core is largely iron, incredibly hot, generating the planet's magnetic field through movements scientists call the geodynamo, but the precise dynamics are difficult to study. We can't visit the core, can't directly sample it, so understanding relies on seismic waves, magnetic measurements, and computer models. Why does the magnetic field fluctuate? Why do the poles occasionally reverse, with north becoming south? What causes the patterns of heat flow that drive plate tectonics? The Earth is a heat engine, slowly churning, and you're living on its thin, cool skin, insulated from the furnace below by layers of rock, while processes you'll never see shape the ground you walk on according to rhythms measured in millions of years. Let's shift to something smaller, something microscopic but crucial. Science still can't fully explain how cells decide what to become during development. A fertilized egg contains all the genetic information needed to build a complete organism. But how do cells know whether to become heart tissue or bone or brain? This process, called differentiation, involves intricate networks of gene regulation, chemical signals, and environmental cues. But the master program, the logic that orchestrates billions of cells dividing and specializing in just the right ways, remains incompletely understood. You began as a single cell, and through a process that's part instruction and part emergence, you became the complex, organized person resting here tonight. That transformation from one to many to organized complexity is one of nature's great miracles, executed flawlessly billions of times across the living world, yet still holding mysteries in its details. And here's something that touches on chance and pattern, something that mathematicians and gamblers both think about. Science still can't predict truly random events, even in principle. Quantum mechanics suggests that some processes are fundamentally random, not just unknown but actually uncaused in any deterministic sense. When a radioactive atom decays, quantum theory says the timing is genuinely random, not following from some hidden variable we just haven't found yet. This is different from complexity or chaos. It's randomness woven into the fabric of reality. The universe, at its most fundamental level, includes dice throws that nothing can predict, moments of pure chance where possibility collapses into actuality for no reason other than that's what happens. It's a strange thought that causality has limits, that some things just happen, spontaneous and uncaused, and yet here the universe is, somehow containing both law and randomness, order and surprise, pattern and possibility all at once. Let your thoughts become softer now, less defined, like watercolors blending on wet paper. There's no need to hold on to anything you're hearing. Just let it flow through you. Your body is heavy and comfortable, sinking deeper into rest. Your mind is beginning to wander in that pleasant way that happens before sleep, where ideas drift and merge and lose their sharp edges. This is exactly where you should be. The mysteries will still be here tomorrow, patient and endless, but right now, they're just here to keep you company, gentle presences in the dimness of your awareness. Let's think about something musical, something that happens in nature without instruments or training. Science still can't fully explain why humpback whales sing such complex songs, elaborate patterns of sounds that can last for hours and travel hundreds of miles through the ocean. Only male humpbacks sing, and all the males in a population sing variations of the same song, which evolves over time, slowly changing from season to season. The songs might be related to mating, but if so, why such complexity? Why the patterns and repetitions that almost sound like composition? Whales are mammals like you, with brains capable of culture and learning, and their songs suggest an inner life we can barely imagine, a richness of communication and perhaps even aesthetics happening in the darkness of the deep ocean, beautiful and mysterious. Songs without human listeners carrying meaning we may never fully translate. Now consider something that happens in your own mind, especially during times of stress or boredom. Science still can't fully explain mind wandering, the default mode of the brain when it's not focused on a specific task. Your mind wanders frequently, drifting through memories, imagining futures, constructing scenarios that haven't happened and might never happen. This seems inefficient, but research suggests mind wandering serves important functions, perhaps helping with creativity, problem solving, and emotional regulation. But the mechanisms remain unclear. Why does the mind generate this constant stream of thought when left to its own devices? What determines where it wanders? And why is it so hard to stop, even when you want to focus? Your brain is, in some sense, always telling itself stories, and consciousness is the experience of being both the author and the audience, watching your own thoughts unfold. Let's think about something you've probably never witnessed, but which is happening constantly around the planet. Science still can't fully explain how monarch butterflies navigate during their multi-generational migration. Each year, monarchs in North America travel thousands of miles to specific wintering grounds in Mexico, often returning to the exact same trees their ancestors used, even though no individual butterfly makes the complete round trip. They use a sun compass, adjust for the time of day, possibly sense the Earth's magnetic field, but the complete navigation system remains mysterious. How does genetic information encode a route? How do butterflies that have never made the journey know where to go? These delicate creatures, weighing less than a gram, accomplish feats of navigation that humans need sophisticated technology to match, guided by inherited wisdom we're still learning to understand. Now let's consider something abstract, something that exists in the mathematical shadows. Science and mathematics still can't prove or disprove the existence of odd perfect numbers. A perfect number is one where all its proper divisors add up to the number itself, like 6, which is divisible by 1, 2, and 3, and 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6. All known perfect numbers are even, and mathematicians have wondered for thousands of years whether any odd perfect numbers exist. It might seem like an obscure question, but it touches on deep properties of numbers and has resisted proof despite centuries of effort. Mathematics, for all its certainty and logic, still contains open questions, places where even the purely abstract realm of number and form holds mysteries, riddles that neither computers nor human ingenuity has yet solved. Let's shift to something you might see if you venture outside on the right kind of night. Science still can't completely explain all the mechanisms behind bioluminescence in different organisms, the ability of living things to produce light. Fireflies use it for mating, deep-sea creatures use it for hunting or defense, fungi use it for reasons we're still uncovering. The chemistry involves luciferin and luciferase, molecules that react to produce light, but why it evolved independently in so many different lineages, how it's controlled, and what all its functions are remain areas of active research. Life has learned to make light, to carry its own illumination through dark waters and nighttime forests, and that ability, repeated across the tree of life, speaks to the creativity of evolution, the way living things find solutions to problems using the materials at hand, sometimes creating beauty as a side effect. And speaking of evolution, science still can't fully explain the Cambrian explosion, a period about 540 million years ago when most major animal groups appear suddenly in the fossil record. For billions of years before that, life was mostly simple, single-celled or small and soft-bodied. Then, in a geologically brief period, complex animals with shells, eyes, appendages and diverse body plans appeared. Why then? What triggered this burst of evolutionary innovation? Theories include rising oxygen levels, the evolution of predation creating evolutionary arms races, or genetic regulatory systems reaching a complexity threshold. But the full explanation remains debated. It's as if life, after billions of years of patience, suddenly decided to experiment with form. And from that ancient explosion of creativity came the ancestors of everything alive today, including the lineage that led eventually to you, lying here, thinking about deep time and the mysteries of how you came to be. Let's think about something that shapes your daily experience in invisible ways. Science still can't fully explain how the circadian rhythm is maintained and synchronized in all the cells of your body. You have a master clock in your brain, in a region called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, but nearly every cell in your body keeps its own time, oscillating with roughly a 24-hour rhythm. These cellular clocks influence everything from metabolism to immune function to mood. But how are they all coordinated? How does light reaching your eyes synchronize trillions of individual cellular timekeepers? And why does disrupting this rhythm through shift work or jet lag have such profound effects on health? You're a society of clocks, all ticking together, keeping you synchronized with the rotation of the planet. And tonight, as darkness has fallen, your body knows on a cellular level that it's time to rest. Now consider something you might taste tomorrow morning. Science still can't fully explain why coffee affects different people so differently. Caffeine blocks adenosine receptors, preventing the buildup of sleepiness, but some people can drink coffee before bed and sleep fine, while others feel jittery from a single cup. This variation is partly genetic, related to how quickly your liver metabolizes caffeine, but that's not the whole story. Individual differences in receptor sensitivity, brain chemistry, and even psychological expectations all play roles. Coffee is one of the most studied substances on Earth, yet its effects remain personally variable, a reminder that biology is not one size fits all, that each body is its own ecosystem with its own rules. Thankfully, you don't need coffee right now. Your body is ready for sleep, moving toward it naturally, following its own rhythms. Let's think about something happening right now in the sky, invisible to your eyes but detectable with instruments. Science still can't fully explain solar cycles, the roughly 11-year pattern of increasing and decreasing solar activity. The sun's magnetic field flips with each cycle, and sunspot numbers rise and fall, but the underlying mechanism driving this regularity remains incompletely understood. It involves the interplay of the sun's rotation, convection currents in its interior, and magnetic field dynamics, but predicting the exact timing and intensity of solar maxima and minima is still challenging. The sun, that steady presence that seems so constant, is actually cycling through moods, through periods of activity and calm, and Earth bathes in its variable light, receiving slightly different amounts of energy depending on where the sun is in its mysterious cycle. Now let's consider something that happens in your own awareness. Science still can't fully explain synesthesia, the phenomenon where stimulation of one sensory pathway leads to experiences in another. Some people see colors when they hear music, taste shapes, or associate specific colors with numbers or letters. Synesthesia appears to involve unusual cross-wiring between brain regions that process different types of sensory information. It's more common than once thought and seems to have a genetic component, but the mechanisms and reasons for its existence remain unclear. Synesthetes live in a world where the senses blend, where perception is more interconnected than most people experience, and their reports offer glimpses into the malleability of consciousness, the way the brain constructs reality from the raw data of sensation. Let's drift to something ancient, something written in stone and bone. Science still can't fully explain the extinction of the dinosaurs, not with complete certainty. The impact hypothesis, an asteroid strike 66 million years ago, is well supported, but debates continue about the relative contributions of the impact versus volcanic activity in the Deccan Traps of India. Was it the asteroid alone, the volcanism alone, or some combination that tipped the balance? And why did some species survive while others perished? The extinction reshaped life on Earth, clearing the way for mammals to diversify, eventually leading to primates and humans. You exist because of an ancient catastrophe, because something ended one world and allowed another to begin, and that event, for all its study, still holds questions about timing, mechanism, and contingency. And here's something that touches on the nature of matter itself. Science still can't fully explain turbulence, the chaotic flow of fluids and gases. Turbulent flow is everywhere. In the air around flying birds, the water tumbling down rivers, the swirling of cream in your morning coffee. Engineers and physicists have studied it for centuries, and while there are useful approximations and models, no complete theory of turbulence exists. The equations that govern fluid motion, the Navier-Stokes equations, are notoriously difficult to solve for turbulent conditions. In fact, whether these equations always have smooth, well-behaved solutions is one of the Millennium Prize problems in mathematics, unsolved and carrying a $1 million reward. So every time you watch water flow, you're witnessing a phenomenon that has stumped some of the greatest minds in history. Chaos hiding in the everyday. Complexity emerging from simple rules in ways we still can't predict or fully describe. Let's think about something you might experience, a sensation that seems simple but isn't. Science still can't fully explain the itch sensation and why scratching relieves it. Itching is different from pain, using some of the same neural pathways but creating a distinct sensation that compels you to scratch. But why does scratching help? The relief is temporary and sometimes even makes itching worse afterward. Theories suggest scratching creates a mild pain signal that overrides the itch, or that it interrupts the neural signals, but the complete picture remains unclear. Your nervous system has evolved this specific sensation and this specific response, an itch and the urge to scratch, and the relationship between them is more complex than you might think. Another small mystery in the catalog of embodied experience. Now consider something that touches on identity and medicine. Science still can't fully explain why some organ transplants are rejected and others accepted, despite advances in immunology and tissue typing. The immune system is astonishingly good at distinguishing self from non-self, attacking foreign tissue as if it were an invader. Immunosuppressant drugs help prevent rejection, but they're blunt instruments, dampening the entire immune response and leaving patients vulnerable to infection. Why the immune system evolved to be so particular, how it learns the boundaries of self, and how we might teach it to accept helpful transplanted organs more gracefully. These remain active areas of research. Your body is fiercely protective of what it considers you, and expanding that circle to include donated organs requires working against millions of years of evolved defense mechanisms. Let's think about something happening far from Earth. Science still can't fully explain the rotation curves of galaxies, which is part of what led to the hypothesis of dark matter. When astronomers measure how fast stars orbit around galactic centers, the speeds don't match what visible matter would predict. Stars far from the center move faster than they should, as if held by additional, unseen mass. This is strong evidence for dark matter, but it's also possible that our understanding of gravity needs modification at galactic scales. Some physicists propose theories like modified Newtonian dynamics, but dark matter remains the leading explanation, mysterious and invisible, holding galaxies together in ways that require us to acknowledge that most of the universe's mass is something we can't directly detect. The cosmos is built on invisible scaffolding, and we're still learning its architecture. Now let's consider something beautiful and transient, something you might see on a cold morning. Science still can't fully explain all the intricate variety of snowflake forms, why each one seems to be unique. Snowflakes form when water vapor crystallizes around a particle of dust or pollen in clouds. The crystal grows as it falls, and its shape depends on temperature and humidity. But the specific paths a snowflake takes, the exact conditions it encounters, create variations that ensure almost no two are identical. The underlying physics is understood, the hexagonal symmetry of ice crystals, but the emergent complexity, the branching and elaboration that creates those perfect, intricate patterns, arises from chaos and contingency. Each snowflake is a frozen record of its journey through the clouds, a small sculpture created by chance and physics, beautiful and ephemeral, melting away moments after it lands. Let's think about something vast and slow, something that shaped the world you know. Science still can't fully explain all the mechanisms that trigger ice ages, the periodic glaciations that have covered large parts of Earth in ice. Milankovitch cycles, variations in Earth's orbit and axial tilt, play a role, changing the distribution of sunlight, but they're not sufficient alone to explain the full pattern of glacial and interglacial periods. Feedback loops involving carbon dioxide, ocean currents, and ice sheet dynamics all contribute, but the system is complex and not fully modeled. You're living in an interglacial period, a warm pause between ice ages, and the climate that shaped human civilization is, in geological terms, temporary. The ice will return eventually, unless human activity changes the equation in ways we're still trying to predict and understand. And here's something that happens in your body, essential and mysterious. Science still can't fully explain how general anesthetics induce unconsciousness. We touched on this earlier, but it's worth sitting with the mystery a moment longer. Anesthetics are diverse molecules, from gases to injected drugs, and they seem to work through multiple mechanisms, affecting ion channels and neurotransmitter systems. But the common endpoint, the loss of consciousness, remains puzzling. How do these varied substances all lead to the same result? What are they doing to the brain's networks that causes awareness to vanish? And why can some people hear conversations during surgery, even reporting events later, despite being ostensibly unconscious? The boundary between conscious and unconscious is sharp in experience but blurry in mechanism. A threshold science is still mapping, trying to understand what it means to be aware and what happens when that awareness is chemically paused. Your breathing has slowed even more now. Can you feel it? Each breath is a little deeper, a little softer than the one before. Your muscles have released tensions you didn't even know they were holding. The mysteries are floating around you now like distant stars, present but not demanding, there if you want them but not insisting on your attention. This is the art of falling asleep, letting go without trying to let go, allowing your mind to become quiet not through effort but through acceptance. You're safe here in this moment, held by the mystery of existence itself, and sleep is coming closer with each soft breath. Let's think about something that connects you to everyone who came before. Science still can't fully explain the origin of language, how humans developed the capacity for complex symbolic communication. Language seems to require specific brain structures, genetic mutations like the FOXP2 gene that affects speech production. But when and how these evolved remains debated. Did language emerge suddenly or gradually? Did it start with gestures or sounds? How did groups agree on meanings, building up vocabularies from nothing? Other animals communicate, but human language has recursion, the ability to nest ideas within ideas infinitely, and this combinatorial power makes it unique. You're listening to language right now, sounds that carry meaning, and the fact that you can understand these words, translate them into thoughts and images, is a miracle so familiar you barely notice it. A gift from ancestors who learned to speak and passed that learning down through time. Now consider something that shapes your world in invisible ways. Science still can't fully explain how Earth's magnetic field is generated in detail. The basic idea, the geodynamo driven by convection currents of molten iron in the outer core, is accepted, but the specific dynamics, the patterns of flow that maintain the field, remain incompletely modeled. The magnetic field protects Earth from solar radiation, channels particles into the polar auroras, and guides migratory animals. But it's not constant. It weakens and strengthens, drifts and flips. The poles have reversed hundreds of times in Earth's history, and the field is currently weakening, though whether this signals an impending reversal, no one knows. You live surrounded by this invisible field, moving through lines of magnetic force you can't perceive, but which shape the environment in profound ways. A planetary mystery operating on scales both spatial and temporal that dwarf human experience. Let's think about something small and strange, something happening in the quantum realm. Science still can't fully reconcile quantum mechanics with general relativity, the two great theories of 20th century physics. Quantum mechanics describes the very small, the world of atoms and particles where uncertainty and probability reign. General relativity describes the very large, the curvature of spacetime by mass and energy, the dance of planets and galaxies. Both theories are extraordinarily successful within their domains, but they're mathematically incompatible. At extreme scales, where both should apply, such as inside black holes or at the Big Bang, the equations break down. Physicists have proposed various theories of quantum gravity, string theory and loop quantum gravity among them, but none are confirmed. The universe operates according to rules we've glimpsed but not unified, as if reality speaks two different languages depending on scale, and we're still searching for the translation key. Now let's consider something closer to home, something that affects countless people. Science still can't fully explain what causes migraines, those severe headaches that can be accompanied by nausea, light sensitivity, and visual disturbances. Migraines seem to involve neural, vascular, and chemical components, possibly related to waves of electrical activity spreading across the brain's cortex, but the exact mechanisms and triggers remain unclear. Why do some people get migraines while others do? Why do they run in families? What's happening in the brain during the aura phase that some migraineurs experience? Treatments exist, but they're often trial and error because the underlying cause is still partially mysterious. Pain, that most immediate of experiences, especially pain of this complex type, remains one of the body's least understood signals. Let's think about something that happens in the night sky, visible to the naked eye under the right conditions. Science still can't fully explain the zodiacal light, a faint, diffuse glow visible along the ecliptic after sunset or before sunrise. It's sunlight reflecting off dust particles in the solar system, concentrated in the plane where planets orbit, but the exact distribution and sources of this dust remain uncertain. Is it from comets shedding material, asteroids colliding, or some combination? How is the dust replenished against the forces that should sweep it away? The zodiacal light is a gentle reminder that space isn't empty, that even the solar system contains material we're still cataloging, still trying to understand, faint evidence of the processes that maintain our cosmic neighborhood. And here's something that touches on the nature of matter and identity. Science still can't explain what happens to information in black holes, a puzzle known as the black hole information paradox. According to quantum mechanics, information can't be destroyed, but according to general relativity, anything that falls into a black hole is lost forever beyond the event horizon. When black holes eventually evaporate through Hawking radiation, Does the information escape somehow, or is it destroyed, violating quantum principles? Physicists including Stephen Hawking worked on this problem for decades, and potential solutions involving holography and the nature of event horizons have been proposed, but no consensus exists. It's a paradox at the intersection of physics' greatest theories, a place where our understanding breaks down, suggesting that either quantum mechanics or relativity, or perhaps our understanding of both, needs to be revised in ways we haven't yet imagined. Let's think about something you might do tomorrow, something as ordinary as walking. Science still can't fully explain how the nervous system coordinates complex movements, how your brain sends signals and integrates feedback to let you walk smoothly across uneven ground without thinking about it. Walking involves coordinating dozens of muscles, maintaining balance, adjusting for terrain, all happening mostly automatically. The cerebellum and motor cortex play crucial roles, but the precise algorithms, the ways neural circuits compute and adjust movement in real time, remain areas of research. You learn to walk as a child, and now your body remembers, executing enormously complex calculations so smoothly that you never notice the miracle of staying upright, of propelling yourself forward, of navigating space with grace born from practice and neural learning. We're still trying to understand. Now consider something happening constantly beneath your awareness. Science still can't fully explain how the immune system distinguishes between self and non-self at a molecular level. Your immune system has to recognize and attack viruses, bacteria, and cancer cells while ignoring your own healthy tissue. This requires education during development, where immune cells that attack self are eliminated or suppressed, but mistakes happen, leading to autoimmune diseases where the body attacks itself. How does the immune system learn what's self? How does it maintain tolerance while remaining vigilant? And why do these systems sometimes fail? Your body is constantly making decisions about what belongs and what doesn't, microscopic judgments that keep you alive, based on recognition systems evolution has refined for hundreds of millions of years, yet which still hold mysteries in their implementation. Let's think about something vast, something that shapes galaxies and destiny. Science still can't explain the nature of black hole singularities, the points at the centers of black holes where density becomes infinite and the known laws of physics break down. General relativity predicts singularities, but physicists believe these predictions indicate the limits of the theory rather than actual infinite quantities. Quantum effects, which aren't included in general relativity, probably become important at such extreme scales, but without a theory of quantum gravity, we can't describe what's really happening at the heart of a black hole. Singularities are places where spacetime itself becomes so warped that all our equations fail, where reality exceeds our ability to model it, infinity standing in for truths we don't yet have the language to express. Now let's consider something that happens in your own mind, a protective function that sometimes backfires. Science still can't fully explain how and why false memories form, why people can remember events that never happened, sometimes with great detail and conviction. Memory is reconstructive, piecing together fragments each time you recall something, and in that reconstruction, errors and outside information can creep in. Suggestive questioning, imagination, and social pressure can all create false memories that feel entirely real. This has profound implications for eyewitness testimony and personal identity, raising questions about what memory is for. If memories can be false but feel true, what does that mean about the reliability of your sense of past? Your identity is built on your memories, but they're more like stories you tell yourself. Stories that can change in the telling, and that mutability is both a feature and a flaw of human consciousness. Let's think about something beautiful and cyclical, something that happens every year. Science still can't fully explain the exact triggers for animal migration, particularly how animals know when to begin their journeys. Migrations are timed to seasons, driven by changes in day length, temperature, and food availability. But the internal mechanisms that translate environmental cues into migratory behavior remain incompletely understood. How does a bird in Canada know when it's time to fly to South America? What hormonal and neural changes occur? And how is the timing calibrated across individuals so that migrations happen as population-wide phenomena? Animals are connected to the Earth's cycles in ways humans, with our artificial lights and climate control, have partly lost, and their behaviors speak to systems of knowledge encoded in genes and triggered by signals we're still learning to read. And here's something that touches on the edges of what life even means. Science still can't fully explain viruses, where they came from, or whether they should be considered alive. Viruses are bits of genetic material wrapped in protein, incapable of reproducing on their own but hijacking cells to make copies. They exist in a strange zone between life and non-life, simple enough to crystallize like minerals, but complex enough to evolve and adapt. Where did they originate? Are they ancient, predating cells, or did they evolve from cellular life, perhaps as escaped genetic elements? Different viruses may have different origins, adding to the complexity. Viruses have shaped the evolution of all life on Earth, driving adaptations and sometimes transferring genes between species, and yet their nature remains ambiguous, challenging our definitions, existing in that liminal space where categories blur and simple questions reveal hidden depths. Let's think about something that happens every time the seasons change. Science still can't fully explain why leaves change color in autumn. This seems like something that should be understood, and partly it is. Chlorophyll breaks down as days shorten, revealing other pigments that were always present but masked by green. But why does this happen at all? What's the evolutionary advantage of the colors? Some researchers suggest the bright reds and yellows might serve as signals to insects, warnings not to lay eggs on trees that are shutting down for winter. Others think the colors are just byproducts, beautiful accidents with no particular function. Autumn's display might be one of nature's aesthetic gifts, a burst of color before the gray of winter, and the full explanation might be a combination of chemistry, evolution, and accident. Beauty emerging from processes that don't need beauty as their goal. Now consider something that shapes one of your most important relationships. Science still can't fully explain romantic love, the intense attachment and desire that characterizes pair bonding in humans. There are hormones involved, oxytocin and vasopressin and dopamine, creating feelings of pleasure and attachment. There are evolutionary explanations about pair bonding helping raise offspring. But none of this fully captures the experience, the particularity of loving this person and not someone else, the way love can be overwhelming and irrational and central to human life. Brain imaging shows which regions activate when people look at photos of loved ones, but measuring activation isn't the same as understanding experience. Love remains mysterious in its intensity and specificity, a phenomenon that's both universal and deeply personal, shaped by biology but exceeding any purely biological explanation. Let's think about something at the boundary of physics and philosophy. Science still can't explain why there's something rather than nothing, why the universe exists at all. This is perhaps the deepest question, and it might not have a scientific answer, might not be the kind of question physics can address. Even if we trace the universe back to the Big Bang or some quantum fluctuation, we can ask why there are quantum fields that can fluctuate, why there are laws of physics, why there's anything capable of asking the question. Some physicists suggest the question is meaningless, that existence is brute fact. Others propose multiverse scenarios where universes bubble into existence constantly, making non-existence unlikely. But the mystery remains, this fundamental amazement that anything exists, including you, lying here, aware of your own existence, participating in the universe's apparent capacity to be conscious of itself. Now let's consider something small and vital. Science still can't fully explain how plants sense light direction, a process called phototropism. Plants grow toward light sources, and they can detect light intensity and direction, but the cellular mechanisms that transduce light signals into growth responses are still being researched. It involves hormones like auxin redistributing in response to light, causing differential growth that bends the stem. But how do cells detect the direction of light at a molecular level? Plants don't have eyes or nervous systems, yet they navigate towards sunlight with remarkable precision, solving spatial problems using chemical gradients and cellular communication. Architecture emerging from simple rules repeated across millions of cells. Life finds ways to sense and respond to the world using mechanisms that still surprise researchers with their elegance and complexity. Let's think about something that happens in the atmosphere, dangerous and beautiful. Science still can't predict lightning strikes with precision. Meteorologists know the conditions that favor thunderstorms, the charge separation in clouds that creates lightning, but predicting where and when a specific bolt will strike remains impossible. Lightning is a discharge phenomenon, following the path of least resistance through air, but that path is determined by countless factors including air density, moisture, and the presence of ions and particles. Each strike is unique, branching through the sky in fractal patterns, reaching from cloud to ground or cloud to cloud in milliseconds. Lightning has fascinated and frightened humans since before history began, a display of nature's raw power, and it retains its mystery despite centuries of study. Each bolt a singular event that physics can describe in general but not in particular. And here's something that touches on perception and reality. Science still can't fully explain optical illusions, not just the mechanisms in the eye and brain, but why they work, Why our visual system makes consistent mistakes that can be exploited. Illusions reveal the shortcuts and assumptions your brain uses to construct visual experience from sensory data. The brain predicts and fills in information, interprets ambiguous signals, and sometimes those interpretations are wrong in predictable ways. But why those particular shortcuts? What evolutionary pressures shaped vision to work this way? Illusions are windows into the processing, revealing that what you see is always an interpretation, a model built by your brain, not a direct access to reality. Your perception is constructed, edited, a story your nervous system tells you, and illusions are moments when the story reveals its seams, showing you the machinery behind the magic. Feel how far you've drifted now. Your body might feel almost weightless or perhaps very heavy, sinking into softness. Both are signs that sleep is approaching, that your nervous system is letting go. If thoughts are still moving through your mind, that's okay. Let them pass like clouds. You don't need to follow them. The mysteries have done their work, occupying the edges of your awareness, keeping you company without demanding anything from you. Just breathe softly and slowly, and trust that sleep will find you in its own time. You're exactly where you need to be. Let's think about something microscopic but profound. Science still can't fully explain how ribosomes work, how these molecular machines read genetic instructions and assemble proteins with such fidelity. Ribosomes are made of RNA and proteins, and they translate messenger RNA into chains of amino acids, building every protein your body needs. The process is understood mechanistically, but the ribosome structure is enormously complex, and how it maintains accuracy while working so quickly remains an active area of research. You have millions of ribosomes in each cell, all working constantly, reading genetic code and building the molecular machinery of life. And they're doing it right now as you rest, maintaining your existence through a process so fundamental it's easy to forget how miraculous and mysterious it is at a detailed level. Now consider something that happens in your social world. Science still can't fully explain human laughter, why we make these particular sounds when amused or joyful. Laughter is universal across cultures, appears early in development, and even has parallels in other primates, but its evolutionary origins and functions remain debated. Laughter strengthens social bonds, signals play versus aggression, and releases endorphins. But why this specific behavior? Why the particular sound and breathing pattern? And why is laughter so contagious, spreading through groups in waves? You've probably laughed today, made this ancient sound that connects you to millions of years of primate social life. And even though it feels simple and spontaneous, it carries depths we're still exploring. A vocal expression of joy that exists partly beyond explanation. Let's think about something happening far overhead. Science still can't fully explain cosmic rays, high-energy particles from space that constantly bombard Earth. They're mostly protons and atomic nuclei traveling at nearly the speed of light, and they come from supernovae, pulsars, and possibly other extreme cosmic events. But the sources and acceleration mechanisms for the highest energy cosmic rays remain mysterious. These particles carry energies greater than anything human technology can produce, and they've traveled for millions of years across the galaxy to collide with Earth's atmosphere. creating cascades of secondary particles. Right now, cosmic rays are passing through you, rare ones with enormous energies born in violent events across the cosmos, carrying information from the universe's most extreme environments, messages written in particles we can detect but not always trace to their origins. Now let's consider something intimate and universal. Science still can't fully explain the act of falling in love at first sight, why sometimes two people meet and feel an immediate, intense connection. There are theories involving pheromones, visual cues, and subconscious processing of compatibility indicators, but none fully explain the phenomenon. The brain can make rapid assessments based on limited information, pattern matching against stored experiences and preferences, but that doesn't capture the subjective intensity, the feeling that something significant has happened in a moment. Love at first sight might be a romantic notion more than a distinct phenomenon, or it might be revealing something about how the brain processes social information, how it recognizes potential for connection in ways faster and deeper than conscious reasoning can track. Let's think about something ancient, written in stone. Science still can't fully explain the wow. Signal, a strong narrowband radio signal detected in 1977 by a radio telescope searching for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence. The signal lasted 72 seconds, came from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, and has never been detected again despite repeated searches. Was it alien? Probably not. More prosaic explanations like a passing comet or terrestrial interference are more likely. But the signal remains unexplained, a tantalizing anomaly that sparked speculation and hope that humanity might not be alone. The universe is full of signals, electromagnetic radiation at every wavelength, and we're listening, hoping to find patterns that indicate intelligence, other minds reaching out across the cosmic void, but so far mostly, we're hearing silence and mystery. And here's something that touches on mathematics and reality. Science still can't prove the Goldbach conjecture, a simple statement that every even number greater than 2 can be expressed as the sum of two prime numbers. It's been tested for numbers up into the trillions, and it always works, but no general proof exists. Why does mathematics contain such statements, simple to state but impossible to prove with current methods? What does it mean that patterns we can observe and verify remain beyond formal demonstration? Mathematics often feels like discovery rather than invention, as if mathematical truths exist independently and we're uncovering them. But then we encounter limits, places where certainty ends and conjecture begins, reminding us that even in the abstract realm of pure logic, mystery persists. Let's think about something essential to your experience right now. Science still can't fully explain sleep inertia, that groggy, disoriented feeling when you first wake up, especially from deep sleep. For a few minutes to half an hour after waking, cognitive performance is impaired, reaction times are slow, and the world feels slightly unreal. This isn't just residual sleepiness. It's a distinct state where parts of the brain wake faster than others. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function, seems to take longer to reach full activity. But why? Why would the brain need this transition period? Perhaps it's protective. a buffer zone between the vulnerability of sleep and the demands of waking life, but the mechanisms and purposes remain partly mysterious. When you wake tomorrow, you might notice this state, this liminal zone where sleep hasn't quite released you, where consciousness is returning but hasn't fully arrived. Now consider something vast and cold, something at the edge of the solar system. Science still can't fully explain the structure and origin of the Oort cloud, the theoretical shell of icy bodies surrounding the solar system at enormous distances. Comets that take thousands of years to orbit the Sun probably originate there. But the Oort cloud is so distant that no spacecraft has reached it, and it's never been directly observed. Its existence is inferred from cometary orbits and models of solar system formation. How did it form? How is it structured? How many objects does it contain? These questions remain largely theoretical, a mystery at the edge of the Sun's influence, a halo of frozen matter surrounding the planetary realm, waiting in darkness and cold at the boundary of what we call our cosmic neighborhood. Let's think about something that happens in your body during illness. Science still can't fully explain why fevers are beneficial, why the body raises its temperature in response to infection. Moderate fever seems to help the immune system fight pathogens, possibly by speeding up immune cell activity and slowing pathogen replication. But the exact mechanisms and the trade-offs involved remain unclear. Fever costs energy and can be dangerous if too high, so why did evolution favor this response? The set point for body temperature is carefully regulated by the hypothalamus, and during infection, the body deliberately raises that set point, creating what feels from the inside like being cold even though you're objectively hot. It's a strange compromise between fighting infection and maintaining function, a response that's been part of the immune system for millions of years, but which still carries questions about costs and benefits. Now let's consider something happening in the ocean depths. Science still can't fully explain how deep-sea creatures survive the enormous pressure, the crushing weight of water miles above them. At great depths, pressure is hundreds of times greater than at the surface, enough to compress gases and deform structures, yet fish and invertebrates live there comfortably. They've evolved various adaptations: lack of gas-filled spaces, flexible bodies, specialized proteins that function under pressure, but the full suite of molecular and physiological solutions remains an area of research. These creatures exist in an environment utterly hostile to surface life, and they thrive, moving through darkness and pressure in forms shaped by constraints we rarely experience. The deep ocean is alien, more foreign in some ways than the surface of Mars, and the life there represents solutions to problems we're still learning to appreciate. Let's think about something that might happen in your dreams tonight. Science still can't explain why nightmares occur, why the dreaming brain sometimes generates frightening scenarios. Nightmares are different from night terrors, which occur in non-REM sleep. True nightmares happen during REM sleep and are vivid, story-like experiences that wake you with fear. Theories suggest nightmares might help process threats, rehearse danger responses, or deal with trauma and anxiety. But why they're so unpleasant, why the brain would create such distressing experiences, remains unclear. Perhaps nightmares are mistakes, dream content accidentally straying into threatening territory without adaptive purpose. Or perhaps there's value in confronting fear in the safe space of dreams. Either way, if you have a nightmare tonight, remember it's just your brain's theater, harmless shadows, nothing that can hurt you in the waking world. And here's something that touches on the mystery of existence itself. Science still can't explain why the fundamental constants have the values they do. The speed of light, the strength of gravity, the mass of the electron, these numbers aren't derived from deeper principles. They're measured, discovered, and plugged into equations. But why these particular values? Why is the speed of light exactly 299,792,458 meters per second? Is there a deeper theory from which these constants emerge, or are they arbitrary accidents of how this universe happened to form? In a multiverse, perhaps different universes have different constants, and we find ourselves in one where the values allow complexity in life. But in this universe, these numbers define the character of reality, setting the stage for everything that happens. And we don't know why they are what they are, only that they work, that they weave together to create the cosmos as we know it. Let's think about something simple that becomes strange when you examine it closely. Science still can't fully explain how bicycles stay upright when moving. For a long time, people thought gyroscopic effects from the spinning wheels or the geometry of the steering were responsible. But experiments with specially designed bikes that eliminate these factors show that bikes can still balance. The full explanation seems to involve a complex interaction of multiple factors: speed, steering geometry, rider input, and the bike's dynamics. But there's no single, simple mechanism. You learned to ride a bike probably as a child, and now your body knows how to balance without thought, solving physics problems through intuition and practice that science is still working to fully describe in equations. Now consider something happening throughout your body. Science still can't fully explain aging, why organisms deteriorate over time. There are many theories: accumulation of cellular damage, telomere shortening, mitochondrial dysfunction, epigenetic changes, but no single explanation captures all of aging's complexity. Why do organisms age at different rates? Why do some species barely age at all? And why did evolution allow aging in the first place? Perhaps aging is a trade-off: resources devoted to reproduction rather than indefinite maintenance. Or perhaps it's an accumulation of problems evolution couldn't fully solve. You're aging right now, slowly, cells dividing and dying and accumulating changes, and the process is so gradual you don't notice it day to day. But over years and decades, it transforms everything. Aging remains one of biology's deepest mysteries, a universal process with no single cause. Let's think about something that happens when you move through the world. Science still can't fully explain how you catch a ball. This seems simple, something you might do without thinking, but the computations required are staggering. Your brain has to track the ball's trajectory, predict where it will be, coordinate your body's movement to intercept it, all in real time with incomplete information. The ball follows a parabolic path affected by air resistance and spin, and your visual system has to extract this information from changing images on your retinas. Yet people can catch balls easily after a little practice, using strategies that computational models are still trying to replicate. Your brain is solving differential equations you couldn't consciously solve, demonstrating that intelligence isn't always conscious, that the body knows things the mind doesn't have to understand. Now let's consider something happening at quantum scales. Science still can't fully explain the measurement problem in quantum mechanics, why observation seems to collapse the wave function. Before measurement, a particle exists in a superposition of states, a probabilistic haze of possibilities. After measurement, it has a definite state. But what constitutes a measurement? Is consciousness required, or is any interaction sufficient? Different interpretations of quantum mechanics offer different answers. The Copenhagen interpretation accepts collapse as fundamental. Many worlds' interpretation says all possibilities occur in branching universes, and other interpretations deny collapse altogether. The math works, the predictions are precise, but the underlying ontology, what's actually happening, remains contested. Quantum mechanics is the most successful theory in physics and also the most mysterious in its implications. Let's think about something that shapes ecology and evolution. Science still can't fully predict ecosystems, responses to changes, why some ecosystems are resilient and others collapse from small perturbations. Ecosystems are complex networks of interacting species, each affecting others through predation, competition, and cooperation. And these networks have emergent properties that aren't obvious from studying individual species. Small changes can cascade through the system in unexpected ways. Tipping points can lead to sudden shifts between stable states, and understanding why, and when these transitions occur, remains challenging. You're part of an ecosystem, the human species embedded in global networks of life, and the changes humans are causing, through climate and land use and pollution, are rippling through systems whose full responses we can't predict with certainty. Ecology is the science of relationships, and relationships are always more complex than the individuals involved. And here's something that touches on the nature of mind. Science still can't explain how mental images work, how you can picture something in your mind's eye. When you imagine a sunset or your childhood home or a loved one's face, what's happening in your brain? Imaging studies show that visualizing activates some of the same brain regions as actually seeing, but the experience is different, less vivid, more controllable. How does the brain generate these internal representations? Why can some people visualize vividly while others, aphantasics, have no visual imagery at all? Mental imagery is a window into how the mind works, how representations are formed and manipulated, and it remains one of consciousness's interesting mysteries. The ability to see with the eyes closed, to create worlds inside your head that only you can access. You're so close to sleep now. Your mind is drifting in that beautiful space between thoughts, where ideas float by like dandelion seeds on a breeze. Let them go. There's nothing to hold on to, nothing to figure out. The mysteries have been good companions, but now they're fading too, becoming part of the general softness of approaching sleep. Your body has done all the work it needs to do. Now it's just about letting go, about allowing consciousness to slip away like a boat drifting from shore. Soon you'll be dreaming, or perhaps sleeping so deeply that even dreams won't reach you. Either way, you're safe, You're comfortable and sleep is here. Let's think about something that happens in soil, in forests, in the hidden world beneath your feet. Science still can't fully explain the wood wide web, the fungal networks that connect trees underground. Mycorrhizal fungi form partnerships with tree roots, and these fungal threads connect multiple trees, allowing them to share nutrients, water, and even chemical signals. Trees can send carbon to smaller trees, warn neighbors about insect attacks, and support stumps that would otherwise die, keeping them alive for years through the network. But how much communication and cooperation is really happening? Are trees actually sharing information, or are these just automatic chemical exchanges? The wood wide web suggests forests are more connected and communal than they appear, that trees might have something like a social network, but interpreting the interactions remains controversial and mysterious. Now consider something that shapes your sense of stability. Science still can't fully explain how you maintain balance, especially the subtle adjustments you make constantly without awareness. Balance involves input from your inner ear, your vision, and proprioceptive sensors throughout your body, all integrated by the brain to keep you upright. But the system is more complex than just processing sensory data. Your brain predicts motion and preemptively adjusts, runs internal models of your body's position and the forces acting on it. When you stand still, you're not actually still. You're constantly making tiny corrections, swaying and adjusting, a dynamic equilibrium that masquerades as stability. Balance is active, not passive, a continuous conversation between prediction and sensation, and the algorithms your nervous system uses are sophisticated enough that robots still struggle to replicate them. Let's think about something that happens in your mind, especially at times of stress. Science still can't fully explain intuition, the feeling of knowing something without conscious reasoning. Sometimes you just sense that something is right or wrong, that you should trust someone or avoid a situation, and you can't explain why. Intuition might be unconscious pattern recognition, your brain processing vast amounts of experience and contextual information below awareness and presenting conclusions as feelings. But the mechanisms remain unclear. How does unconscious processing work? What's the boundary between intuition and conscious thought? And why does intuition sometimes feel so certain, even when it's wrong? Your mind works on multiple levels simultaneously, and intuition is one of the ways the hidden levels communicate with consciousness, sending messages in the form of feelings and hunches. Now let's consider something happening in the cosmos, in the space between galaxies. Science still can't fully explain the energy source for ultra-high-energy cosmic rays, particles with energies so high they shouldn't exist according to some theories. These particles have traveled vast distances, and they carry energies equivalent to a baseball thrown at high speed, concentrated in a single atomic nucleus. Where do they come from? Black holes, gamma-ray bursts, and exotic phenomena have been proposed, but the sources remain unidentified. Detection is rare because these particles are so uncommon, but each one that arrives is a messenger from some extreme event, carrying information we're still learning to decode, evidence of physics at energies we can barely study any other way. Let's think about something gentle, something that happens in light. Science still can't fully explain all the details of how light interacts with matter at quantum levels, particularly in complex materials and systems. The basic interactions are understood, photons being absorbed and emitted, but in materials like high-temperature superconductors, or in biological systems like photosynthesis, the details get complicated. Quantum coherence, where multiple quantum states are maintained simultaneously, appears to play roles in natural systems that scientists are still uncovering. Light and matter dance together in ways that are both wave-like and particle-like, and in that dance, mysteries remain, places where predictions become difficult and phenomena surprise researchers, reminding us that even the interaction between light and atoms, fundamental as it is, still holds depths to explore. And finally, let's rest with one last mystery, perhaps the gentlest one. Science still can't fully explain why being in nature makes people feel better. Studies consistently show that time in natural environments reduces stress, improves mood, enhances creativity and benefits health, but the mechanisms aren't completely clear. Is it the visual complexity, the fractal patterns that appear in trees and waves? Is it the quiet, the absence of human noise? Is it something about natural light or the microbes in soil? Or is it something deeper, a connection to the world we evolved in, a coming home to patterns our bodies and minds recognize at some fundamental level? You don't need to understand it to benefit from it. Just the thought of nature, a memory of a forest or ocean or mountain, can calm the nervous system slightly, can remind you that you're part of something larger, something that's been here long before you and will continue after, something mysterious and beautiful and endlessly worth wondering about. And here we are at the end of this journey through 100 mysteries, 100 invitations to wonder. You've traveled from the smallest quantum scales to the largest cosmic structures, from the depths of the ocean to the furthest reaches of space, from the workings of your own body to the abstract realms of mathematics and consciousness. And through it all, the message has been the same. The universe is still mysterious, still full of questions, still inviting curiosity and awe. This isn't a failure of science. It's a celebration of how much there is to know, how the universe keeps revealing new depths the more we learn. Every answered question opens up new mysteries, like looking through one door only to find a hallway with a dozen more. That's the nature of understanding. It deepens, it expands, but it never exhausts the wonder. I hope these mysteries have been good companions tonight, that they've occupied your mind gently, given you something to drift with rather than against. Questions without answers can be frustrating during the day, but at night they're perfect. They ask nothing of you. They don't demand solutions or action. They just float there, beautiful and strange, like stars reflected in still water, and you can look at them or through them, or let them blur into the background as you slip toward sleep. Maybe you're already dreaming. Maybe you've been dreaming for a while now, and these words are just reaching you in that liminal space between waking and sleeping, where everything is soft and nothing needs to be remembered. That's okay. That's exactly how this is supposed to work. You don't need to remember the mysteries. They'll still be here tomorrow, patient and eternal, waiting for anyone who wants to wonder about them. Thank you for spending this time here, for letting me guide you through these questions. Thank you for your curiosity, for being the kind of person who finds comfort in mystery rather than being frightened by it. That's a beautiful way to move through the world, with open hands and an open mind, accepting that some things are unknown and being okay with that, finding peace in the spaces between certainty and confusion. If you enjoyed this journey, maybe consider subscribing to the channel, or leaving a like, or sharing it with someone who might need a gentle drift into sleep. But there's no pressure. The most important thing is that you rest, that you let go of the day and all its demands, that you give yourself permission to stop trying and just be here in the darkness, safe and warm, held by the great mystery of existence itself. Sleep well, my friend. Let the questions fade. Let the answers wait. Let yourself dissolve into that peaceful unknowing that is sleep, where consciousness releases its grip and you become part of the larger patterns, the breath of the universe moving through you, holding you, carrying you through the night. Sweet dreams or no dreams at all, just deep restorative rest. You've earned it. The world can wait. Everything can wait. For now, just sleep.